And we'll continue on that note. This is rather concerning for many of us. Now, AfriForum has found both cholera and E-coli in water from the Vaal River. It tested samples from the river and towns nearby. An earlier test also found cholera in the water. For more insight on this, we have AfriForum's Lambert de Klerk. Lambert, good morning to you and thank you so much for joining us. Just give us the extent of the water contamination that you have uncovered.
Good morning, Sindy. Maybe first of all to clarify what the process was for AfriForum to do these tests. So a few months ago, around about, I'd say May month, we tested our first cholera cases within the Vaal River system. So we specifically then made our investigation a bit broader. So we started focusing on the Vaal River system as a whole. So we started doing testing within Mpumalanga, where the Vaal River is above the Vaal Dam towards straight through the Vaal Dam and then going downwards through to the Northern Cape. And what we found was, luckily, there's no cholera specifically within drinking water that we've tested, because we tested all of these towns, because most of the towns next to the Vaal River system also do the extraction for drinking water purposes, specifically throughout the Vaal River. So we first of all did that. And secondly, we also focused on any other areas where people might have complaints regarding the water, or they believe that their drinking water is not up to standard. We did laboratory tests on that as well. And what we found is that there's specifically 7 locations where we've tested and we tested positive for cholera within the Vaal River itself, meaning the river system. And these places, just in a broad spectrum, is at the Barrage Bridge in the Vaal River. So that is just past Van der Bijl Park, on your way to Parys side. Then we also did a new test at Parys as well, where we also picked up cholera. And then 2 interesting ones where we also picked up, which is not part of the system, but where communities complained regarding the water, was specifically in Welkom at the Bong, where there's a channel basically. It's called the Moster Channel, where it starts. We picked up cholera, as well as in a furrow that runs into the Witpan. So for viewers that are aware and familiar with Welkom, there's quite a big few of these pans in Welkom, and Witpan is one of the biggest ones in Welkom, where we've also picked up that runs into it.
Now we've done a focus extensively on the water crisis, Lambert, and particularly on the outbreak of the cholera in Hammanskraal, as we've seen. And we know that the infrastructure is also problematic in that it has been neglected over years. But when it comes to the Vaal Dam in particular and the cholera and E. coli that you have tested, I think communities would primarily be concerned about access to quality drinkable water. Yes. What relief is there that you would find that, or maybe even advice that communities should practice?
Yes. Basically, first of all, the golden rule is boil your water. That is the safest thing to do to make sure that all bad bacteria is killed within the water. That is the first thing that everybody should practice. But what we've seen throughout the Blue and Green Drop report that the department released, the interim or the watch reports they released about 2 weeks ago, what we've seen is that the biggest problem with most of the water treatment plants, meaning the plants that specifically give drinking water for you in your tap, what we've seen is one of the biggest key problems is that they do not do the chemical and biological testing or microbiological testing anymore, which is very important. That means they're doing those tests, tell you what is in the water so that we know what we must dose with the water to make sure that the water is safe for drinking standards. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that there is a massive deterioration in that specific sector, and the watch report even shows that as well.
Yeah. Now, we were on Monday in the northwest in Rustenburg, or Brits bordering Tabazimbi, and the water board there, they've got a state-of-the-art laboratory, and we're seeing scientists giving us the assurance that the water is tested. In fact, we have the best quality water, not in all areas, one would admit, but that they're saying that the water boards are, in effect, ensuring that the water is safe. You seem to disagree with that.
Not entirely. I do believe that it differs from place to place. A place like Rand Water, what we've seen is one of the better water boards in South Africa, or I won't say one of the better, it's most likely the best if you look at some of the others. I can tell you, for instance, in Paris, where there's literally, we've tested water there and there was E-coli in the drinking water. So it depends on place to place. And what you can go, if you go and look at the department's watch report as well, it shows which provinces are the ones that are lagging or struggling to keep up with what's going on in South Africa regarding the overall problems within municipalities. And the Northwest is one of the key areas. The Free State is the other. There's people, for instance, in the Northern Cape that we know of in Warrington that haven't had water for quite a long time now already, because the municipality is struggling to deliver on water services. And what we must differ from is what is a water board, and where municipalities are the water service authority as well as the water service provider. Water boards in most areas are appointed by municipalities to be water service providers. And that's where it differs, because a lot of municipalities in South Africa, that is not the case. They are their own water service providers as well.
I know, but we are acutely aware that, be it a human capital challenge, or the fact that we don't have the necessary skill set, or even political appointments, which leads to a lack of leadership in certain cases. With your report, how then do you engage with the Department of Water and Sanitation to find solutions so that, we're able to provide quality drinking water?
Well, we try, first of all, by negotiating with the department and discussing the problem. Unfortunately, for instance, in Paris, with the May month outbreak where we picked up the first cholera, we sent letters to the department and we tried to discuss this problem with them, and we didn't even receive anything back from them, not even an email or a read recognition, anything. Since then, it has picked up, I must be honest. We've had a meeting, for instance, with the Department of Water and Sanitation and Minister Senzo Nkunu about a week ago, if I'm not mistaken, in Paris, where we discussed, and that was specifically around the problems that Paris has and the community as a whole, meaning Tumahole and Schoemansville, which forms part of Paris, where we've had long discussions on what should be what should be done to fix what's going on in Paris. And we've had quite a few discussions with them on that matter specifically. But we try and also, we sent through a letter yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, to the department regarding our national project, which we've been doing the past 10 years, called the Blue and Green Drop, because the department did not do it for 10 years. The last time they did it previously, before these two new reports, was in 2013. So we started doing our own Blue and Green Drop as a watchdog, basically.
Yeah, we'll certainly follow up with you, Lambert, but thank you indeed for the work that you've done and sharing your insights with us this morning. We're speaking to Lambert de Klerk, Head of Environmental Affairs at AfriForum. One would hope that if a system works, it should simply be replicated so that quality water is provided. By the way, mind you, it is a constitutional right.